Maybe now. Can you hear me? I think now it's working. Only 1 second to. Yeah, so I think it's working now. I just want to make sure it's working. Can you hear me? Yeah, so it's working. Good, good. Well, if during this this live stream there are other issues, feel free to leave a comment. Is the first live stream I'm doing, and I'm using a platform I'm not really familiar with. So I hope everything will go smoothly from this point forward. Thank you so much for joining. This will be kind of a short discussion. I wanted to be more like an open discussion where you can ask your questions on what it means to do cloud configuration review. And I'll just make an introduction so that you can know if it's worth investing your time and energy in learning this new skill, because it requires some expertise and some effort. So this is what this session is about. And while we will talk about multiple cloud providers in the beginning, the rest of the workshop will be mostly on AWS, as you will see it's also the most relevant one, and it's also the most fun one to learn cloud security. So let's begin. We will cover today some introductory things like terminology, what is offensive cloud security, what are the prerequisites you need in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of permissions, what are the challenges that you might face when you are trying to do cloud security configuration reviews or want to learn this skill. And next, we will try to cover some resources that you can explore to learn more about cloud security, either before our next sessions or afterwards. Good. So some things about me. I'm doing security research mostly on AWS, but let's say in cloud in general. I like to go to conferences and speak there. I presented at DEF CON, at Security Fest, NoHat, DevCamp, and a few others. I'm a director of cloud research and development at OpenCI, where I'm having some fun while pushing some boundaries in terms of what can be done on cloud from an offensive security perspective. And I'm also a penetration tester, and I covered a large spectrum of AWS environments. I've seen environments with monthly bills of $800,000, but also environments that only had an S3 bucket and an EC2 instance. And no matter how big or small the environment, I always managed to report something to identify some hardening things. Mostly because, as you will see, cloud is something that can always be improved, but that doesn't mean necessarily that everything should be implemented. And we'll see more about it shortly. Regarding the schedule for the next session, so this is the first session, the first of 5. We will then have a second session about what you should or shouldn't do when you are doing security testing in AWS. A third session about doing your first cloud configuration review, where we will have an introduction in the main AWS services, authentication, and how you can actually start manually doing the configuration reviews. And then we will have the fourth session about using automated tools like Prowler, Scout Suite, and also other tools that I personally find very useful. And the last one would be about some additional tips, some things about how to report the findings, how to calculate the CVSS, and how you can continue learning about this skill. You have the dates in the right side. All the hours are UTC +2. That is the Romanian hour. But the session will also be recorded, so you don't have to worry if you can't cover one. Now, for two of these sessions, we will have Ryan Nolet and Tony from Prowler. Let me see if I can remove this this logo. Just 1 second. Yeah, there you go. So Ryan Nolet and from AWS Outreach Security Team and Tony de la Fuet. Sorry, Tony, if I misspelled your name. They will provide more insight into how you should perform AWS security engagements. That will be Ryan in the second session. And Tony will present how Prowler can be used for making your life easier during cloud security configuration reviews. And not only this, but starting with the third session, we will gather how should I say this? We will open the registration for giveaways. The AWS outreach team via Ryan supported us with 20 vouchers for the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification, which is a very good beginner level certification that you can get. Also, 3 vouchers of $100 in the AWS Merch store, where they have some really cool things. And also, Prowler will give out some swag, and more information about that will come shortly. Let me just remove the message with solving mic issues, because we managed to fix that. Just 1 second. Okay, I found it. Good. Now we're ready to move forward. So that would be in terms of what the next sessions will cover. Also on the fourth one, I will also provide you access to an AWS environment so that you can run Prowler and other tools by yourself. So I will give you credentials in an insecure, but not that insecure AWS environment, so that you can get an idea of what it means to scan an environment, do some manual checks, and I hope that will be useful for you and will not leave me with a huge AWS bill. So this will be. So let's continue with the first session. I want to cover some terminology that is can be confusing in the beginning, just to make sure we are talking about the same things, and most of them will cover AWS. But before, let's start with some general aspects for the 3 main cloud providers. So you can have public or private cloud providers. When you hear private cloud provider, it means that you can make an account. You have to be somehow, I don't know, invited. But a public cloud provider is a cloud where you can actually make an account. You don't need any pre-approvals. And so a public cloud provider is AWS, also Azure and GCP. These are the most relevant ones. Also the ones that have the biggest market share combined. But there are also other players like Oracle, Alibaba, and IBM. You can look into those if you want. And they provide kind of everything. That's the cool thing about cloud. You have from computing, storage, and databases, you even have quantum computing. So AWS has a service that allows you to play with quantum computing. I never tried it, but just to give you an idea of how how much a cloud provider can give to you in terms of capabilities. Now, from my own experience, I can say that it's hard to master more than one. My expertise zone is AWS. I also know a bit of Azure and GCP. I've done some cloud configuration reviews in those, but if I have to do one again in Azure or GCP, I kind of have to stay with the documentation closely so that I can review what I'm seeing. But there's no real need to know more than one, especially in the beginning. So just pick one and try to understand it before moving to a second one. And you can try them all. Find something that you like and find something that is relevant in your context. For example, when I was a web developer, everyone around me was using Azure because it was easier for companies to manage the whole ecosystem of C# in Azure, right? So that so it would have made sense for me to learn Azure back then, which I did a bit. But after I switched to cybersecurity, I started learning AWS, and it proved to be the right choice because most of our projects were coming from AWS. So definitely a good switch from my end, but maybe in your context, maybe in your geographical area, you will encounter more of Azure or GCP instead of AWS. So you really have to find what works best in your context. Now you might be tempted to go somewhere where is a gap you can fill. So for example, there are not so many people that know GCP in terms of kind of offensive security, even less for Oracle, Alibaba, or IBM. But that means there is also a small number of projects that you can take. So you have to take that into consideration when you choose to learn a cloud provider so that you can actually practice what you learn, right? Good. Now, some terminology. You will encounter a lot of customers, AWS accounts, user accounts, YAM identities. So to give you an idea, a customer, especially when AWS says customer, it means a client that is using their platform. Like I'm having an account at AWS, then I'm the customer, right? Next, there are AWS accounts, which you might confuse frequently with a user account. So that's why I'm always trying to say AWS account or user account. The AWS account is essentially the whole environment where resources are created, and a user account is just a user identity, right? And then we have other identity and access management resources that we will cover in the next sessions. But just to show you some screenshots from AWS. So this is an AWS organization, is a service from AWS that allows you to manage multiple AWS accounts at once. For example, this is my own AWS organization, and here I have multiple AWS accounts, right? And I'm using this because I have to rotate between accounts because I keep giving out my account ID, so I hold workshops, and it's safer for me to just delete the account after I use it in an unsafe manner. But this is how you can see some AWS accounts. And once you log in through whatever method, you will see the account ID where you are logged in, along with your identity. Let me just maximize this so you can see better. So here we have the account ID and then my identity, right? So I'm this federated user that has administrator access permissions. Good. And this is a user account. It's just a user that's essentially the most encountered type of account you will find. Um, it's not something I recommend you using. It's a lot safer to use other methods of authentication, but you should be familiar with how, how a user looks like in AWS. And with this user, you can log in the web console, or you can use the access credentials to perform API calls programmatically. Good. Now let's cover some other buzzwords like serverless. Um, don't overthinking. Serverless means that you don't have to worry about the server. That's mostly it. And one example in AWS is the AWS Lambda, which is essentially a computing service that executes code, and you don't have to worry about configuring the server behind the code that you want to execute. You just write the code and deploy it, and everything will be taken care of by AWS. So that's mostly what serverless is. And there are other services that run in the same manner, meaning that you don't have to worry about the server identity. Cool. Now, I like to call things by their name, kind of. And we have some categories of resources like services, sub-services, features, resources, and we will not spend a lot of time over it. But just to give you an example, so we have this big service called EC2. This is a computing service, and inside EC2 we have some other sub-services like instances, images, Elastic Block Store, and so on. And next, under each sub-service, we also have features like I don't know, instance type, launch templates, and inside those features, you also have resources. Like here with the green arrow, we are pointing to the instances that are running, right? Which in this case is 0, but just to give you an idea, this is how a resource can. So resource in my book is kind of the smallest resource unit in AWS. Um, but as I said, we will not spend a lot of time on it. Good. Something that it will annoy you in the beginning is about regions. In AWS, there are over 30 regions with 14 enabled by default, and it acts in some cases like a soft separation of resources. For example, I can deploy an EC2 instance, which is essentially a virtual machine in AWS. I can deploy it in a region from Europe, and I can deploy another one in a region from US. By default, these instances do not appear in the same dashboard, and they can communicate with one another if they don't have public IPs. And if you are in the beginning and you create a resource and after 15 minutes you don't find it anymore, it means that you are in a rogue region, and you should look in what region you created that resource. And it can be quite annoying, especially if you have a lot of regions enabled. In this AWS account, I have all the regions enabled, and imagine I start an EC2 instance and I don't know the region where I did it, and the next thing I have to check all the regions to see where it is. Obviously, I can run some automated tools, but you have to be careful because some things can inflict costs, and you should delete them after creating them if you don't need them anymore. And there are also some services that are global, and you can't use them on a region basis. For example, the identity and access management service, also CloudFront, and a few others like S3, which is the storage service from AWS. And these services are globally available. Most of them behind the scenes are stored in the region US East 1. But you will not have the same issue with creating a resource and then not knowing where it is, because it will be treated as a global resource and be displayed the same dashboard. Good. I see that there are no questions so far, so we'll just move forward with what is offensive cloud security. So when we're talking about cloud hacking as exploiting cloud-hosted systems with cloud-specific attacks, or not so, but it's just hacking. If you're attacking a web application hosted in AWS, you can say it's cloud hacking if you are actually doing some cloud-specific attacks, right? It's as simple as that. And then we have also abusing misconfigurations and having some post-exploitation attacks that are specific to the cloud environment, like privilege escalation. It will work in a certain way depending on the cloud provider, right? And cloud hacking is cool and all of that, but it has some limitations. For example, let's take this diagram. We have a web application in an EC2 instance. Let me just maximize this. And this EC2 instance, I mean the web application within the EC2 instance, is using other services, right? If you are doing just a penetration testing, red team activity, you might be able to exploit the web application. Sorry, let me just come back for a minute. You might be able to exploit the web application, the proxy server, but without knowledge of the resources behind the web application, you will not be able to identify the whole spectrum of vulnerabilities or security issues within that environment, right? So maybe the API gateway or the S3 bucket are actually public, but you don't identify them during your penetration testing activity, and because of that, a real attacker might identify them later by spending more time on that web application. So there is this limitation when you are doing just hacking. And you can do multiple types of offensive cloud engagements like red team, insider threat simulation, penetration testing. And to explain a bit the insider threat simulation scenario, essentially you are given permissions in the AWS account like a web developer, for example. So you will have the same level of permission as a developer, and using those permissions, you check what is possible to be done by simulating that a developer account is compromised. So that's the insider threat simulation. And we also have the penetration testing. So imagine you are doing a penetration testing on the web application deployed in AWS. Is very limited because, as I said earlier, you attack only the web application and you might not identify other resources that are used behind the scenes, even if they are vulnerable. And it can be a waste of time. So cloud hacking, really fun. I love it, but in terms of efficiency, it's not that good. You can cover a lot of it. It's true that you can use hacking techniques to highlight or explain how some misconfigurations are bad and they bring a high risk. But other than that, it's not really useful or not as useful as the next thing. So here is what you will cover with with a penetration test, you will only target the proxy server and the web application at least directly. And if you identify anything else, then awesome, you can further try to exploit the other resources, but maybe you will not identify them, at least not in a short time. Well, I'd like to present you the better alternative about doing configuration. And configuration review is good for everybody, not only uh, for the client, but it's also good for you because it gives you a white box perspective of the issue. And from this hacker that has access to the cloud environment of someone that can modify because maybe it has some read permissions. Now you're just a chill person that has only read-only access and will only read configuration and highlight vulnerabilities. So it's almost like a full white box approach because whatever is there, you can see it. Is very valuable for clients because you are maximizing the identification of vulnerabilities within a given time, and even more, you can run some automated tools that will do around 90% of the job, grabbing some low-hanging fruits, doing enumeration for you, and also you have supports like the cheese benchmark for AWS that you can just follow and will most likely identify some findings along the way. And about regarding tools, you have Scout Suite, which is more beginner friendly. I've used it a lot. And you also have Prowler, which provides more coverage. I think is the best tool at the moment in terms of cloud scanning. It covers more than AWS, just like Scout Suite. But Prowler has active development and new features are constantly added, and it's overall a better tool. But there's no one stopping you from using both and compare results, which I recommend you to do. And overall, I think configuration reviews are the best approach to assess the security of a cloud environment. However, I have to say that it can be a bit boring, especially if you are used to getting reverse shells, running God knows what exploits, doing SQL injection, right? It can be a bit boring because you only read configuration from an environment. There are some cases where the environment has certain vulnerabilities that will allow you to move from read-only permissions to actually have write permissions. That doesn't mean that you actually have to act on those permissions, but it can be also exciting in some cases where you can move from just a read-only user to a user that now can perform privilege escalation and maybe performing remote code execution on other EC2 instances. So it can be some fun, but overall it can be a bit boring. And I admit it's not really for everybody. But here is the advantage. So now let's say we have the same web application deployed in an EC2 instance. Well, now we are seeing everything that's inside the AWS environment except what's inside the EC2 instance. So a cloud configuration review doesn't cover the server itself unless the client wants that, but it covers everything that's beside the server where the web application is running. And most clients are going for penetration test plus cloud security configuration review, so that you can get the full picture from both worlds, and you have the testing of the web application along with the reviewing of the other cloud resources. Good. Now let's talk about some prerequisites in terms of knowledge and permissions. In terms of knowledge, I think if you know a bit of uh, cybersecurity general principles, like some the CR triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, something about least privilege, logging, so general cybersecurity principles, then you are good to go because you will see configurations, you will read on the documentation what that configuration is doing, and then you just have to think how is that good or bad, and can I exploit it, or it can be exploited in certain scenarios. So some cybersecurity general principles are usually more than enough, at least to get started. But it also helps to know some web application exploitation, network exploitation, to be familiar with Linux, maybe Docker, but that's for taking things at the next level. There are some misconfigurations that you have to put them in a context, like if somebody, you have to explain to the client, if somebody exploits the web application in this way, then they will get permissions and so on. So it helps knowing a bit more than just cybersecurity general principles, but it can be enough to start work, to start in the beginning. And in terms of permissions, you have, usually you should go with global read-only permissions. There's no way of going with less access unless the client really wants to limit what you can see. And here you have multiple choices. So the the things highlighted in red are policies in AWS that give you permissions for reading configurations. And there are three of them: read-only access, view-only access, and security audit. We will talk in the next sessions about the differences between them. But usually these are the policies that you want to have because they will give you the most access to what you actually have to configure. There is overlap between them. Also, I think read-only access covers everything that's in view-only access, but we'll talk more about them in the next sessions. And the customer can insert custom deny statements. For example, you're checking an environment, and in that environment, there are certain secrets. Now, there is no point for you to actually read the secrets. Everybody knows they are secret. You don't actually need to read the file. But the global read-only permissions might give you that access. You don't need it, right? The client can just set a custom deny statement that will prevent you from reading the secrets. And that's actually recommended because you don't need to have that responsibility of managing or at least knowing that from your level of access, maybe some credentials were exposed, right? So you can read the configurations just fine, and then you can ask for a deny statement in case the client wants to protect some secrets. Just be careful that some clients might try to hide some things and might want to really limit what you can actually see. But we will see in the next sessions how you can handle such cases. Good. So let's see what are the challenges when you aim to learn this this domain. And we will start with maturity. Um, the market is not really at the best level of maturity when it comes to cloud security. So to put this in a context, imagine a few years ago that maybe not everyone understood what it meant to do internal penetration testing. They were arguing that, hey, it's only internal and nobody can access this, so I don't need to check it, right? Some of them are now at the same mentality, but regarding cloud security, they are thinking that it's a segregated environment where you need access in order to perform certain attacks, and they don't really understand yet the value that you can give them by checking the configurations from a security point of view in the cloud environment. So this is a challenge because you would like to practice this skill. And for that, you need some clients, and you have to teach them what are the advantages of doing cloud security configuration reviews. And there is a process for convincing them to accept it. And another thing is the trust. So I I encountered, and even after I had plenty of experience and certifications and everything that you can have in order to show that you can do these things, uh, I encountered big reservations for having access in certain cloud environments. And I was working at a big company. They had a good reputation, so it's just like that. People don't want third party individuals in their cloud environment. It is how it is, but it's something that we have to push for them to accept that it's better to evaluate their security and to give limited access to someone to review their configuration, especially if it's a staging environment and not a production, right? Now, another challenge is the practical experience. Learning cloud security is not as simple as spawning a virtual machine in your own laptop. You actually have to create an account, you have to provide a credit card, you might have to pay for some resources. Now, cloud providers do offer free resources in the beginning, but even so, you might be scared, at least I was, of passing that threshold of having to pay. I didn't know how big a bill might be. But it turns out that you can actually just make an account, start playing with things, and it doesn't cost you that much. I'm playing a lot with AWS. I'm spawning and deleting resources all day. I pay per month like $5. You will not have to pay that much in the beginning, especially if you will have free resources, which you will have. Then we will talk shortly about some training resources that are available online, so that you won't have to have your own AWS account, but it is a challenge. And maybe another big challenge is that you won't find a job just by knowing this. At least I don't think you will. This is rather a complementary skill and not a standalone one. So, in my opinion, if you are already doing a penetration, if you are already a penetration tester, then this skill will fit very well within your your expertise and will make you stand out uh, because it's a niche skill, right? And here I'm talking about from my own experience, but you need to know other things in order for this skill to matter. You won't get a job just by knowing this, right? You will need at least to know some web application penetration testing, some network exploitation. So it's a complementary skill. Well, let's talk about some resources that you can access before the next sessions, or maybe after them. So the resources in green are resources that I've used, and I know they are good. And the ones in the orange yellow color are resources that I think they are good, but I've never used them. And you have here lists of uh, cloud security labs. You will have some online challenges like flows.cloud and flows2.cloud, which are available 24/7, and you don't need an account to use them. You also have some platforms like Hacking the Cloud and Cloud Hack Tricks that have hacking techniques for cloud environments. And next, you have resources for more resources for practicing hands-on labs from Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, Pound Labs, and Cyber. But as I said, the ones in yellow I haven't tried, but I've seen people sharing them online, recommended them, and it seems overall like they have some good things, so it might be worth checking out. And I'd like to give you, if you don't join the other sessions, a list of essential things that you have to use in order to have a good run at doing a cloud configuration review. You should use Prowler and Scout Suite. They might be the best tools out there for a quick cloud scanning. Next, I recommend having closely the latest Amazon Web Services Foundation's CHIS benchmark, which you can download for free, but you have to create an account. With this benchmark, you will be able to check manually a lot of things in an AWS environment, and we'll see in the next sessions how that is helpful, especially in the beginning when you want to learn new things. And in the long run, you'll have to use your own AWS account. There are some attacks that you want to highlight from another AWS account. So let's say you have something that can be publicly accessible from another AWS account. You need your own account in order to provide a proof of concept, so that you can show how it can be exploited, that misconfiguration. So these are the three things I recommend you to have, and using all this and slowly learning new stuff, you'll get pretty good at doing cloud configuration reviews, especially that they are not that hard. You just have to follow some guidelines and have some general knowledge about how cloud works, and you'll be good to discover your own things. And that was it from my end. Now I'm waiting for your questions. Just a quick overview of what's in this slide. So you have the channels for DevCon Cluj. This is the DevCon group, and we have LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Discord. Now for Discord, most of our discussions are in Romanian, but we are thinking about switching that so that more members can join. We have some members from the international community that come to our meetups, and we are thinking about switching to full English, but we'll see depending on who joins at our meetup and the Discord channel. And we also have a QR code in case you want to support us. We have we want to do some things for the community. I'm not the one managing this banking account, and we want to pay some subscriptions, buy some, do some merch, some swag for the community, give some on-site workshops, buy water, buy food for those workshops, stuff like that, and everything we get as a donation, we will turn in the community. So if you want to support us, feel free to do so. And now I will take some questions. So I got a question: what is the future of cloud security when it comes to automatization with AI? I think AI can play a role in cloud cybersecurity. It can help in certain areas. We are still watching how that can fit in. Now, just imagine that you can use AI as a small part of your workflow. It doesn't need to cover everything, but I can tell you from my own experience that if you want to just do cloud attacks, having an AI is not enough. And I can tell you from some engagements I've had. I asked, I think both ChatGPT and Claude about a privilege escalation vector in AKS, which is Kubernetes in AWS, and they wrongly stated that the privilege escalation was not possible, but in fact, I was able to do it. So having an AI that is not trained specifically for cloud security will not prove very useful. But I think there are cases where AI is useful, and I'm actually researching this field, and I can see how in certain cases AI can do a great job of helping doing cybersecurity better for cloud environments. Well, wait a few minutes. I'm checking my other monitor for other questions. So I think this the live stream is a bit delayed depending on the platform. So let's just stay a few more minutes to make sure everyone is up to date with the question section. Another question: the two tools that you have mentioned, do we have to pay for them, and how can we implement them inside our AI workflow? In brackets, AI agents. So the tools are free. No, so both of them are free. You can use them, and they are also open source. How can we implement them inside our AI workflows? Well, it depends on your workflow, but essentially just you have to learn how the tools work first, and depending on what your AI workflow should look like, then you will see how you have to execute the tool, and then how you process the output of the tools so that you have the workflow that you want. So the tools are free. Again, Scout Suite, Prowler, you can find them on GitHub. You can install them using pip from Python, and just play around with them a bit and see how their output looks like, what output they support, and how you can integrate that with whatever AI-based workflow you want to implement. I will just hang around a few more minutes to see if we get another question, and if not, we'll close this stream. And don't forget, Friday is the second session. It will be a pre-recorded session with Ryan Nolet from AWS Outreach Security Team, but I will be online to answer your questions in case you have some. We just got another question. How steep was the learning curve for you to get started on hacking cloud as compared to web? So it was a bit funny. As I said, I was a web developer, and I was a bit familiar with cloud, but with Azure. And one day, after I switched to being a penetration tester, um, we just got a project for an AWS cloud security configuration review, and my manager had asked who wants to do it. And I really wanted to do it, so I took the project, and I didn't know much about AWS security. I mean, I didn't know anything, but I started with a cheese benchmark and with just general cybersecurity knowledge of what is good and what is bad. And I managed to report 13 findings on that engagement. So it's really not that hard. You can just start and get right into it, especially if you already played a bit with AWS beforehand, which I didn't for that engagement, but I wish I had. You will have an easier time learning and performing a good cloud configuration review. Now, the only thing that you should be careful is do not try to report false positives and things that you are unsure of. Better check with other people to be sure that you're not reporting something that's actually um, not a finding, something that shows that you don't really understand the cloud environment. But other than that, it doesn't really matter, and it's easy to learn, and you get just straight right into it. It's mm, nothing compared with doing web application hacking. So I think cloud is the highest level of abstraction that you can get. You just have to know some configurations, and you can say what's good and wrong. Um, it's definitely a lot easier and faster than learning web exploitation. Okay, I think we are getting another question. Can you talk about how is usually a work day for you? So it depends. I will talk about the day that is that involves doing a cloud configuration review. Uh, I just start the day. Let's say it's the first day of engagement. I'm doing a security scan with Prowler and Scout Suite. Next, I'm checking a bit the cloud environment to get an idea how it's used and what what is its scope, right? And I'm doing that while the scan still runs. And after that, I'm checking what the scan revealed by prioritizing based on severity. I'm trying to identify some low-hanging fruits that are clear findings. I'm taking some notes, and that would be pretty much it. And the rest of the days, I'm just leaving. I'm leaving them from for complex scenarios like privilege escalations or other attacks that are a bit harder to validate and to be sure that they actually exist. Another question is, can you implement this with other cloud providers? If you are referring to the workshop, I I I don't think I'm the right person to do it, even if I'm a bit familiar with GCP and Azure. I think there are other resources out there that can better explain things to you. And there is no point in spending time to learn some more or less basic to medium things about cloud security in Azure or GCP when you can straight go for other resources that can better teach you other things. But maybe we have other people in our community from DevCon Cluj that can take on the Azure and GCP and give that workshop. Now, I'm not sure if the question was referring to the workshop, but anything else, tools, testing, I mean, reviewing workflow, yeah, you can apply to other cloud providers as well. Is not dependent on AWS or only a specific cloud provider. Another question. Um, do you usually have like a checkbox list to look after, or is every engagement different? I do have a checkbox list. I mean it's mostly in my mind, but I'm running tools that grab whatever is to grab. But there are some things that tools can cover, right? For example, storing secrets in as plain text parameter in plain text parameters in parameter store, which is a service from AWS. A tool can't really identify that as being a finding, so it's something that I manually check additional to whatever the tool gives me. But mostly it's the output from the tools, and then I have some findings from my own experience that I manually check in order to see if they are present or not. So it's more like a mental checklist, but it's also dependent on the environment. And usually, when you are doing a review in an insecure environment or someone that is at their first cloud security review, you will find a lot of things and you have to pay attention to everything because everything can go wrong. But if you are reviewing an environment that has good security, that has a good architecture, you quickly get the feeling of the environment and you understand how what is worth looking at and what is not. Another question: have you read books about it, or are there books on this topic? I haven't read anything on this topic. I'm not sure if there are books, but the thing with books is that, especially on cloud security, they might get outdated quickly because, let's take, for example, AWS, they are constantly changing things. Some things will remain like they are maybe forever, but a lot of new things appear. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend reading a book about it. There are blogs like Hacking the Cloud and Cloud Hack Tricks that are really good on maintaining something updated in terms of um, security and exploitation. And there are newsletters that can give you more information about the newest articles and cybersecurity changes on various cloud providers. But I would rather keep keep me up to date with other resources than books, even if I'm not sure if cloud security books are out there. Another question: are certifications necessary for cloud security? Um, yes and no. So if you want to convince customer to allow you in the cloud environment, it would help you to have the AWS Cloud Security Specialty certification because it shows that you understand and know cybersecurity from an AWS point of view. That if AWS is the cloud provider that you have to review. Um, and it helps with getting the trust of the customer. The certification is around $300. It's a bit cheaper than other certifications, but it's not that easy for a penetration tester to get it because it actually requires some practical experience. At least it would help to have practical experience when getting it. But I have to admit, I I took the certification while I was a penetration tester with no practical security implementing experience in AWS, and I just learned and took the certification. So it's not impossible. It's a bit hard for a penetration tester to do it, but you just take the certification and that's it. But that certification is more for engineers that are managing security, are implementing security in AWS environments. Now, about other certifications, the thing is that customers will not understand about other certification when it comes to cloud security. So if it's from AWS, Azure, and GCP, good, that's fine, and they can recognize that. Other than that, I don't think it matters. And I have two other cloud security certifications, one from SANS and one from Cyber Warfare. I don't think it helped that much as it helped having the AWS Security Specialty certification. Good, another question. So about the books. So the documentation is the go-to. Yes, absolutely. Read the documentation. Actually, AWS has very good documentation whenever you are trying to do something. Most likely you will find details about it on the AWS documentation. So just go there, search for it, understand what it's doing, and that's pretty much it. There are some attacks that you will not find in the AWS documentation, obviously. And we will try to cover some of those attacks, but you don't have to know everything from the beginning. So we will start a bit slow by learning the basics, by doing some getting our feet wet, right? And from that point forward, you will have the possibility to explore exploitation and learn actual hacking, so that you can uh, do a better job at reporting an issue. But I wouldn't say hacking is uh, a necessary prerequisite, but it's a bit boring without hacking, right? So I would definitely recommend looking into exploitation as well. Another question: do you check Onion sites for the latest techniques and methods? No, everything is on the clear web, and it's like this: is an industry with a lot of money, and there is a lot of research going around, and everyone is publishing their research on the clear web so that they can highlight that their company knows what they're doing, right? So there's no real need for going to on your website. I've never done it. Maybe there are some things but generally, if there is something really interesting that is going around, a company that is doing cloud detection or something similarly will blog about it, so that they can brag about, look what we identified and how this works, and this will show that they have expertise on the matter. So everything is on the clear web. No need to go to shady websites, and I will try to provide some links from the newsletters that you can subscribe to, so that you can be up to date with whatever is new. Just from top of my head is my favorite one, AWS Security Digest. You have AWS Sec, uh, AWS Security Newsletter. I think that's the name of it. And you also have Cloud Security Newsletter. But I will try to provide links to them, so that you can be up to date with whatever research is newly done. And I have to say, there are some blog posts that are very advanced and close to being black hat activity, that is actually just published as a legit blog post, and that is totally fine, and is the way and in the industry operates, and it's a good thing, because nobody wants or have to check shady forums and websites to learn cloud security from an offensive point of view. Okay, I think this is it. We have no more questions, but just to give you an update in the meantime. So the next session will be Friday at 5 p.m. Romania time. It will be a pre-recorded session with Ryan Nolet, where we will talk about the do's and don'ts when it comes to security testing in AWS. A bit separate from this, in case you are interested, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Romania time, I will host another live stream where I will talk about the AWS, not the cloud security defaults between AWS, Azure, and GCP, and that will be a talk with other three guests that are very knowledgeable in both defending and attacking all platforms: AWS, Azure, and GCP. And if you're curious about learning more about cloud security, just join tomorrow, and I'll see you there. So no more questions. Thank you very much for joining in, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a good day.